You are going to die, but I still have things for you to do. I found myself just in darkness. I was weightless, enjoying myself, drifting along in this darkness, and I began to fear and I began to drift downwards. I looked down. So I said, Jesus, come and help me. And this hand came and just grabbed me and said, you don't want to go that way. And he started to pull me upward. And there was light and 6 or 7 angels standing around me, and I just felt this infinite wisdom. The one who'd come to rescue me said to me, you have a choice to make. You've died. You now can choose whether we go on and take you into paradise or whether you go back, complete your life on earth. So you have to make that choice now.
Recently, I booked a transformative energy healing session with Jamie from Refractive Healing. Through her divine energy healing, I found myself rejuvenated, reconnecting with my inner purpose and the universal energy that guides me. Jamie is a truly gifted healer. She seemed to intuitively grasp the challenges weighing on my soul and guided me towards a lighter, more enlightened path. I'm eager to share the secret gift with you, so please embrace this opportunity for healing by visiting the link below to book your complimentary energy healing session with Jamie. Let the journey of rediscovery begin. And now on to today's guest.
I was 49 years old at the time, and I started to get chest pain, which did concern me. It was like a very deep cramp across my chest, and I was a little worried. So I went to see a doctor and have some tests, and they gave me an ECG test to look at my heart and see what was happening. And in the meantime, the doctor said to me, just take it very easy, relax, don't do too much. As if there is a problem with your heart, too much activity might set it off and make it worse. So I did. I relaxed for about a week or so, and the results still hadn't been given back to me. And I was starting to feel better, and looked out my back door to my garden, and it was looking like a jungle. So I thought I needed to get my line trimmer machine and tried to start the machine up to do a bit of gardening. And of course, that machine just refused to start on that day. So I was pulling on the cord trying to start this machine quite a number of times and getting frustrated that it wouldn't start, when suddenly this cramp across my chest just went crazy. It just was huge. And I knew immediately there was something happening with my heart, whether it was a heart attack or something like that. So I was a little worried because I was at home alone. There was nobody else there with me on the property. So I thought, this is not a good scenario to be here alone, having a heart attack potentially. And I started to get quite afraid. And as this was happening, I just heard this very, very loud voice. I still to this day don't know if that voice was audible or if it was just inside my head or exactly how it happened. But this very, very loud voice said, you are going to die, but I still have things for you to do. So I thought, well, this has to be God talking to me. I can't see what else it could be. So I said, well, I'm going to die, but you have things for me to do. I don't see how that could work. But he just said to me, go inside, pack a bag, call an ambulance, and just be ready to go. So I did that. And the ambulance came in quite quick time. It only took about 10 minutes to arrive, and they treated me with morphine and nitroglycerol to lower my blood pressure and took me off in the ambulance. And on the way, they said, we're going to give you a little more morphine, a bit more nitroglycerol, just to keep your heart under control and keep the blood pressure nice and low. So I did that, and very shortly after that, I knew I was going to pass out. I knew I was going to faint. I have passed out in my life other times, so I knew how it feels. And I just told them, I'm going, I can feel it, I'm passing out. And then this was all happening in the ambulance. And then I found myself just in darkness, just absolute darkness. And everything was silent, and I was weightless, I was very light. I felt quite free and easy, and I was actually quite enjoying myself for a little while, thinking this is very pleasant being like this. This is a good thing. But as I continued to be in that state, I thought to myself, I have passed out before. I know how it feels. This does not feel the same. I am too alert. I'm very much with it. I'm very much myself. But here I am in this dark environment with no weight. It felt like I was floating in water. And then it occurred to me, I think I might have died. And that with it brought a bit of fear because I just did not know what to do with that situation. So as I was drifting along in this darkness, and I began to fear and I began to drift downwards. And that, of course, made me more afraid. I was thinking was the sort of feeling I had. And then I looked down. I still had a sense of up and down. I looked down and I could just sense this very deep, black, bottomless pit beneath me. It was like it had no end. It was infinite. And there was nothingness, just absolutely nothingness there. Complete, black, dark nothingness. And I, at that point, did become very afraid. And because I've been brought up a Christian all my life, and I just called out to Jesus. I said, Jesus, come and help me. And I continued to drift. I continued to float downward. And then before too long, this hand came and just grabbed me. And I didn't see much of him at the time, but he just grabbed me and said, you don't want to go that way. And he started to pull me upward. So I was flying upward very, very rapidly, very fast. I'm still not sure what I was flying through. It was all blurring past me, and I could see lights and I could see things just blurring past. I was just traveling so fast I had no idea where I was going or what was happening. But it was happening very quickly. And he continued to pull me upward for some time. It felt like a couple of minutes. And then I finally came to rest, and I gradually readjusted to where I was, and there was light, and I could see probably about 6 or 7 angels standing around me in a semicircle. They were quite amazing beings to look at, and more than that, it wasn't just their appearance, it was the feeling that seemed to come from them into me. And I just felt this very deep, infinite wisdom, this immense knowledge and wisdom and age and timelessness, that they were just above and beyond anything I'd ever experienced in my life. So I was coping with all of this hitting me at once, and I was really, really affected by their presence. I was just awed by them. I was just sitting there, just looking at them, just going, wow, this is incredible. And then the one who'd come to rescue me said to me, you have a choice to make. You've died, but you now can choose whether we go on and take you into paradise or whether you go back and complete your life on earth. So you have to make that choice now. Once you've made that choice, that will be final, and that will continue on. So once again, I had to stop and think that I had young children and a daughter in a wheelchair who was brain injured. I had, a whole life. I had all sorts of things in my life here I didn't feel were finished. So I thought about it for a while, and I became quite agitated and afraid, thinking about my children and thinking about my life and the fact that I had died at this age, this quite young age. So I became afraid again, and the angels reacted very strongly to this. When they saw me becoming afraid, they said, no, we don't want you to be afraid. There is no fear here. This fear is a foreign thing here. And they calmed me down and helped me to feel at peace again. It helped me to feel like I was okay inside. I should explain to you at this point, Sabrina, there were no words. None of this that was happening had any words attached whatsoever, as in spoken words. I just knew what they were thinking. They knew what I was thinking. There was this immediate connection that was not really speech. It was more like what we would consider telepathy. It was all without words, and it was all just silent communication between minds. So they succeeded in calming me down, and I did say to them, look, I think I do need to return back to my life on earth because of my children and all the things I have going on in my life. So they said, okay, and at this stage, the one who had come to get me looked at the other angels and said, one of you go down and check the vessel. By this, I gathered he meant my body. So over the angels, I could see the angel flying off into the distance. And way off in the distance, I could see my own body still lying in the ambulance. And this angel came and hovered around and was observing my body and obviously checking me out to see if it was okay for me to return into that body. And while that was happening, I turned around and just looked at this one being who had come to get me, and I said, "Who are you?" And he just looked at me and said, "I'm the one you call Lord." And for me, there's only one. There's only one ever that I call Lord, and that was Jesus. And I just recognized him as if my eyes were open. I just recognized who he was. And that was perhaps the most brilliant moment in my entire existence, just realizing I was actually there in his presence and with him and with the angels. And it really hit me at that point, and I was just overwhelmed and overcome with this incredible sense of love. The love that was just flowing out from these angels and from Jesus was stronger than I could contain. It was massive, it was beautiful. It was as if my chest felt like it was going to explode with the power of this love. So I was just laid out with this. I was just flat down, just going, wow, this is incredible. This is amazing. And just feeling these floods of warm love flowing through me. It was almost too much to bear. And at this point, he actually said to me, "You've been through a lot of grief." I had my daughter who'd been hit by a car when she was 7. And he said, "I want to come into you and I want to do some healing within you." So I said, "Great, please do." And at this point, Jesus actually, it was like he came inside my soul, and I could feel his presence come inside my soul. And he started to shift and move things around, and I could feel grief being dissipated, and I could feel sadness being taken away. I could just feel things being rearranged within me. And not only that, I could feel his thoughts, and I could feel what he was capable of and what his mind was doing all the time. And that is something I'll never be able to forget, Sabrina. That was massive. I realized at that point that he was timeless and that he could see into the past, he could see into the future, he could know anything, anywhere about anybody or any object in the universe. There was absolutely no limit to his awareness. And this just blew me away. I was just totally, what's the word? I have trouble finding words sometimes to explain these things. It was so big and it was so powerful and it was so beautiful and it was so awesome all at once to just feel his being and to know what he knows just for that few split seconds. And that's something that's changed me forever. I'll never be the same after that experience. He finished doing that, and then he said, "Okay, we're going to send you back." The angel came back and said, "Yes, the vessel is good." By that, I gather they meant it was okay to send me back into my body. And he said, "Before you go back, I want to talk to you about a few things." And he started to talk to me about the choices I would have to make when I return to my life on earth. And he was saying, you need to keep making good choices. You need to keep attached to me. You need to keep your belief and your faith alive. He said, we can't guarantee to bring you back into paradise unless you make these right choices and live the right sort of life. I said, okay, fine, but I'll do my best. And he then took me aside and said, I'm going to show you a few things. And he started to show me moments from my future. And he was running this past the angels as well. And it was as if we were watching a video screen through a veil. And I could see things that were my future life taking place and running like a film in front of my eyes. It was quite incredible. He showed me certain things that have come, other things that have not yet come to pass. I must admit, after all these years, because it's now, 15 years ago, it's quite some time, it's getting a bit blurry in terms of everything he did show me. Some things I understood, some things I did not understand. But there was a lot that he showed me. And when he had finished doing that, he just simply said, all right, now we're going to send you back. And without too much more ado, after that, they sent me back and I felt myself floating downwards again, and I could see a bright light. So I headed towards that light. And suddenly I just emerged in my body and took a huge breath, just a huge gasp of breath. And there I was in the ambulance again after all this happening. And I was totally almost in shock. It was not a pleasant homecoming. It was very difficult because I'd been in this beautiful, beautiful, idyllic, happy, joy-filled, love-filled environment, and I came back into this body, and it felt like hitting concrete. It felt so heavy and so clumsy, and it felt evil. The world just felt evil after being where I had been. And so I was sort of readjusting to being back in my body. But one thing that had changed is I had been in fear, of course, when I was having this heart attack, but I was no longer afraid. All fear had just gone. But I was just thinking to myself, fine, if I die again, great, wonderful. I'll be quite happy to go there again. So I had a little chat with the ambulance operator, the paramedic, and I said, wow, that must have been quite a while. It felt to me like about half an hour had gone by. And the ambulance operator, he was standing with defibrillator pads in his hand. He was about to zap me with these defibrillators. And he said to me, no, it's only been a minute. Your heart stopped 1 minute ago. And I was just totally taken aback. I could not understand how that case. So I've been through lengthy conversations and spent quite some time with Jesus of the Angels. Felt like a good long period of time. And to come back and find that in the earthly plane, only 1 minute had gone by was, to me, quite an amazing thing. So that was it. They took me off to hospital. They found I had been having a heart attack. They inserted a stent in my heart, which I still have to this day. And yeah, there was still things going on. I still could feel and hear angel voices for some days. I could feel one talking to me about things. But that just gradually dissipated. But I've always remembered those things that happened very, very clearly. I've always remembered being there and how it was and how it felt. And I hope that never leaves me. That was just such a wonderful sensation. That's a brief summary of what happened to me, Sabrina.
Such a beautiful story and so much to unpack there as well. When it comes to making the right choices, if we are to think generally as people, what do you think is meant by the right choices? And how do we know what's the right choice and what's not the right choice if we're faced with a decision?
Particularly since this happened to me, I have been a Christian, very much so. I remain a Christian and I believe in that. Absolutely. After being with Jesus, what choice do I have? That, he is the Lord, and that's who I met. So making the right choices, I think Jesus said all of this stuff when he was on earth, and really all we need to do is look at what he said. And he reinforced it with me as well when I was with him. And the central thing to all of it is love. Love is the most important factor, and it was the most important thing I felt when I was there with him. And they were his main commandments. Love your neighbour as yourself, and love God. They're the two great commandments that Jesus gave. So I think if we make our decisions with love-based decision-making processes, we're going to come close to doing the right thing. But look, I also think the reason for Jesus coming to earth was to set us free. Was to set us free from an unjust situation, which is that all humanity has sinned and therefore all humanity dies. And he came to set us free from that. He came to do away with that. So I think it's very important that we recognize him for who he is, for the Son of God, and that he came for that purpose, was to set humanity free. But it's our choice as to whether we accept that, or if we reject that, or if we live our life according to the way he tells us to live our life or not. And I think they're the sorts of things he was talking to me about. If I choose to live that way, if I choose to follow that path, then I can come back. But if I choose not to walk that path and to do things, then there's no guarantee. Another thing that I wanted to unpack from there was you talked about grief, and in our audience, we have a lot of people struggling with it. How has it changed for you before and after the NDE? And as somebody who has been through such an experience with grief,
Do you have any kinds of advice for people going through it?
Look, I could talk for a long time on that question, Sabrina. It's a very good question. Most of the question was this. My daughter was hit by a car when she was 7 years old and had profound brain damage. And she was in a wheelchair the rest of her life and couldn't speak. She was quite mentally alert, but she couldn't speak. She could only use her hands, make signs and signals. And so I was devastated by that. That was very hard for me. And a year after this near-death experience, she actually passed away. She actually died from a swine flu that swept through the world in 2009. She was very weakened, and so that took her. She went at that point. But for your listeners, you can imagine the sort of grief I had with my daughter on her deathbed, and I'm sitting with her on the deathbed. But prior to this, during that year, after my near-death experience and before she died, I had sat with her and told her everything like I've just told you about what happened to me. And she became extremely excited and started pointing at herself. And I said, "What, are you telling me this has happened to you also, Rebecca?" And she said, "Yes." That was her yes sign, pointing out, yes, yes, yes. And she was really strongly telling me that she'd experienced something similar. When she was hit by a car, she was 7 years of age and she was in a coma for something like 3 months. So there was a long time there where she was not conscious at all, not moving, no nothing. And I gather from what she was trying to communicate to me in whatever way she could, that she was actually in the Lord for some or all of that time, and in a sort of heavenly state. And I've read so much about so many NDEs have since then. And that's the case. People, when they're in comas, quite often they go in this heavenly realm. So when she was actually dying, I was able to just turn to her and say, "Rebecca, you know exactly where you're going. You don't need to be afraid. You know exactly where you're going and what's going to happen." And I could just see her whole face just lit up. Even though she was there in pain, on her deathbed, her whole face lit up and she just relaxed and just let go. And she was able to die in peace, just knowing where she was headed for was a good place. And I think to just pass on to everybody who's perhaps got people they may have lost or people who are terminally ill, that God just loves people. He just loves people. He loves you individually. And although we can't always feel that in this existence on earth, that is the case. Once you pass beyond life and go into that situation, he is a loving, beautiful, giving God. And he wants to help you and he wants to give you joy. I think it's one of the main things he wants to do. And so often we stop ourselves from allowing that to happen. That we choose to be in grief. We choose to live our lives in the darkness when there's a bright light just out the door. And I think that's one message I'd really like to bring home to everyone, that it's a good outcome for people who want to live their life well and want to love other people and want to live a good life. It's a fantastic outcome. It's a wonderful outcome. So don't live in fear, don't live in negativity, but live in the knowledge that God loves you deep in your soul. And I think that will help you to perhaps turn around your life, perhaps help you to lift up to a higher level, just knowing that he really does care for you and really does want to be on your side.
The fact that you had the near-death experience, did it change how you process when your daughter was dying? Because you knew that something else was happening than what most people would think, right?
Yeah. Look, it was still a very sad situation, and I was so sad to lose her. But deep in my heart, I knew where she was. And I had dreams about her, very vivid dreams about her, just running through fields of grass and laughing, enjoying herself and just being totally happy. And I just thought, well, perhaps this is God or her trying to let me know that where she is, she's full of joy. And it's really altered my whole way of thinking about death. Now, we think about this life as this is real. This is the real thing. And things like heaven That's just fairy tales. That's just imagination. But once you've been there, once you've actually been in that dimension, you realize it's flipped. It's actually the other way around. That dimension is so much more real than this dimension. It's so much bigger. It's so much better. It's so much stronger in every sense. Being here is really an inferior existence to what it is after death. So I think people really need to try and understand it. I know it's not easy, but try and understand that where we are now, it's nowhere near as good as it will be if you live a good life and love God. It's going to be a better life once you've died. So after death is a better outcome than being in this life. People get so upset when they lose someone, and it is so hard and it's so heart-wrenching. But keep that in mind. God loves them. If they've lived a good life, they've loved people, they've cared for people, God will love them. God will look after them. And if they know Jesus, so much the better. He will look after them even better. This is my message to everyone. God loves humanity, and God wants to save humanity. Jesus actually said, I did not come to judge the world, I came to save the world.
And I think that's such a good takeaway for us as well, right? Because in our world, we deal with judgment so often. And speaking for myself as well, so often I catch myself doing it, even though I know I don't want to. So I always have to sort of take a step back when I catch myself doing it and say, well, it's not really up to me to judge. But it takes a lot of self-awareness to do that.
It is so true. And another thing Jesus said, judge not, and you will not be judged. It's so true. Just love people.
Exactly.
That's the answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I will say from my own experience is some days you can give less love and other days you have a bit more to give. And that's also something that I've come to accept as normal and as okay. But I do my best to always show as my kindest self.
So true. So true.
What I wanted to also get into was how you've changed as a person and how your life has transformed before the NDE and after.
It's a little hard to quantify. I think the most important changes that came about in me was an entirely different feeling regarding life and death. And just that, well, once was faith, and I said, I have faith that there's a God. I choose to believe that there's a God. I choose to follow God. But after this NDE experience, it stopped being faith, it started being knowledge. So I no longer have to wrestle with, is there a God? Is there a heaven? I know there is. I've been there. So that has really changed my whole approach to existence, because there is that solid rock of knowledge there that this is real, that there is something far bigger and far better that cares for us and loves us. So that's helped me to change the way I live my life, I guess. Look, I don't go around preaching this to everybody at work every day. No, that's not the way it works. But I do try to be as generous and as loving and as helpful as I possibly can to the people I meet in my life, the people I work with. As you say, it's not always easy. There are often struggles. There are often difficult times. There are often people you feel like just shaking and yelling at. But overcoming that, I think, is incredibly important, and not letting those human tendencies to hatred and anger and greed and all those sorts of things rule your life. They're the things that will drag you down. They're the things that will stop you going to that heavenly realm. I think that's really important to understand. So hatred, anger, greed, I think there's some of the really big ones that are to be avoided. There's also self-abuse. I don't think that's going to get us a great outcome either. Like alcohol and drugs, no, I don't think that's a good way to go. It gives you perhaps pleasure in the short term, but I don't think God put us here to destroy ourselves. I think he put us here to learn. He put us here to grow. He put us here to help the people we're with to grow and learn. to be in a community and to be loving people and a loving community. And I think that's the ideal existence for us as human beings. And the world drags us away and tries to convince us that getting drunk and getting high is a good life. Well, it's not. It's a very destructive life. It's a very horrible life, and it will tear your life apart. And you will tear the lives of other people apart if you go down that path. So I think it's really important to realize that we as human beings have a responsibility to God to live our lives in a way that is overall positive and helpful to everybody around us.
We talked about hatred, anger, and steering away from those emotions. And now you'll know in the heat of the moment, it's not so easy to do so. And I can imagine you've had, this beautiful experience. You've seen that, the truth is connection, is oneness, is love, and not fear and anger and judgment. But I'm sure that being in this earthly realm, you still find yourself struggling with those emotions at times. Do you have a way for processing that or a way of getting rid of that?
But for me, yes, I do. I do, most definitely. It is a part of what Jesus came to teach us about, which is, number one, communicating with God and being in touch with God. Not just looking at God as some old man in the sky, but God is someone who is actually within us. We can actually God to be within us. And I think that's really, really important to do that sort of thing, because he will actually help us in so many ways. He will calm us. He will keep our anger and those sorts of emotions under control. He will help us to mature. He will help us to float with love. So many things Jesus said about, I will become a river of life welling up within you. And this is the sort of thing, if you start to practice talking to God, talking to Jesus, and communicating with them directly yourself, I don't think you necessarily have to go through a priest or anything like that, but you just start talking to God and listening to God and taking it seriously. Sure, read the Bible, read books about it, learn about it, understand it, and you'll find slowly a transformation starts to take place in your life, where things like anger and hatred, they just start to move aside. They just start to move out the way and be replaced with love. And sure, it's not always easy. It's easy to talk about it, but it's not so easy when you are confronted with things that make you angry to stay calm. And that's where I think this ongoing, steady development and approach of loving people and making a habit of loving people and caring for people, I think that's very helpful. So if your first go-to place is to love people and care for them, it's not quite so easy to slip into anger, because you're coming from a very different perspective. You're looking at them as someone, they may be going through problems, they may have issues. I feel sorry for them now rather than being angry at.
Yeah. And that's so true. So I was reading Brene Brown, and what she was saying aligns very much with what you're saying now, which is that you have to accept that at any given point, everybody's doing their best. And sometimes their best looks differently than what you'd expect their best to be. So even if you see, somebody cutting you off in traffic and you're thinking to yourself, what an awful person, for lack of a better word. But even in that case, maybe they're rushing to the hospital, or maybe they have like something urgent. Like if you knew the whole backstory, you probably wouldn't be so quick to judge. And even in the case that they're not rushing to a hospital and it was not, say, a legitimate emergency, there's still a lot of grace that you can extend. But it does take a minute to just recenter yourself and think, okay, this is the best they can give on this particular moment. And I have to accept this. It's not up to me to judge. They should be better. They should be worse.
Absolutely true. Yeah. And I have changed my way of thinking now that, to exactly what you're saying, if someone cuts me off in traffic, I think, oh, there's probably some reason they need to do that. They need to get somewhere quickly. I'm not going to get angry. I'm just trying to stay calm every now and again I let fly with a few words and raise my hand up, put something to. Yeah, no, I don't let myself get incredibly angry anymore over things like that, or even more serious things. It's just anger is a pointless waste of our energy. It doesn't achieve anything. In fact, it really only achieves negative outcomes for us. When we're angry at someone else, we get stressed. We get all these nasty hormones running around in our body, and it's not healthy for us. It's a very bad thing to fall into. So far better to go the other way. There's a writer called Caroline Leaf. She's very interesting. She's a neuroscientist, and she talks about the fact that brain patterns, neurological patterns, form in our brain, but that they can be revised, they can be rewritten according to what habits you fall into mentally with your thought patterns. She's saying if you can form positive thought patterns, it's like growing new branches on a tree. It suddenly will set up new pathways, and you find yourself able to working that way more easily the more you do it.
Wow,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah, that's also what I read about neural pathways as well, and the science of habit forming. So if you sort of build a habit, whether good or bad, so it could be, say, smoking, or it could be eating healthy or exercising, you're building those connections, right, between neurons. And the more you do that, the more you build that. So because our brains use so much energy, they always want to be energy efficient. So they just go through the known pathway. So if your go-to is exercising, then whenever you'll feel down or you'll be bored, you'll think, oh, I need to exercise. But it could be the same with smoking. After we've built those habits, it's so difficult to then go back and say, well, I'd like to quit smoking, or I'd like to not do that anymore. Because we have so many go-tos that prompt us to, like, now it's the time that you would usually do that.
And look, another thing I wanted to mention regarding that was the aspect of gratitude, thankfulness. So often we take what we have for granted, and we don't ever even think of thanking God for what we have, for the way things are now today. That is something that is very, very powerful. If you start every day with a bit of a declaration, thank you, God, or thank you, universe, or however you want to address it. Thank you for the things I have. Thank you that I'm alive. Thank you that I'm healthy. Thank you for the people I know. Thank you for the things I have around me, the shelter over my head, whatever. Sure, sometimes it's not always good, but even in the middle of the storm, it's a very good thing to thank God, to be at least giving him back some measure of gratitude for what he provides for us on a daily basis. And I think that also helps to change your attitude in so many ways.
Exactly. That's also something that I would advise anybody to do. It literally takes a few minutes. You can do it beginning of the day, end of the day, both, if you're really into it. And it absolutely makes a huge difference in your worldview. It absolutely does, because it just goes to show that the things that you have today are things you prayed for at one point. And I'm sure we all have those things in our lives. There's nobody that isn't better off than they were at some point before. So it's really up to us to also look and think, well, this is how far I've come. This is everything that's happened to me, and give thank you for that. Instead of just looking at what else we want to achieve, right? Because it seems like society nowadays is just full of, I need another car, I need a bigger house, I need more money for more holidays. And it's very easy to get sucked into this loop of wanting more and thinking that you need more, when you actually do not need vacations or a bigger home. It's something that you want, and you for sure can have it. But yeah, needing it, I think it's really important that we make a difference and that we're always content with what we have.
Such good words. The whole concept of what God wants us to be and what the world tells us to be almost opposite to each other. The whole concept of having a good job, being wealthy, having lots of material possessions, that doesn't mean anything to God. Not anything. It's how have you lived your life in the middle of this? And if you've put your job and your wealth ahead of people, then you've got your priorities backwards, and God will not like that. Whereas if you prioritize people and helping people and loving people above making your wealth, then that is really the way to live. That doesn't mean you don't worry about working again. Of course, you still work, you still live your life. You have to. It's part of the deal of being here. But in that situation where you have to go to work every day, in that you love people, you love the person next to you, you help the person nearby you as much as you can, not treat them badly so you can have more money. That's really the measure. I think love becomes once again the great measure of how we live our lives.
I wanted to shift gears a bit and talk about your book. So you've written a book about your near-death experience, and I was wondering why you wrote the book, as well as why is it important that we talk about near-death experiences and to share them?
You ask some very good questions. Why did I write the book? Partly because some people who were close to me told me I should. When they knew what had happened to me, they really did quite strongly say, you need to write this into a book. Another thing, when I was with the Lord and he said, I still have things for you to do, I absolutely believe writing this book was one of the main things that he has for me to do. I think it's an incredibly important message to bring to people that death is going to come. Death is defeated. Death is not the thing that will hold you down forever. Death is the thing that you will pass through to be free, to be complete, to be whole, to be with God. So it's a big reversal of mindset about death. And I think that's why NDEs are so important, because they are hard evidence that when we die, number one, we keep on living. We do not just simply cease to exist. Number two, there is a whole other dimension that we call heavenly realm that is so much above where we are now, and it's something to aspire towards. It's something to aim for. It's something to want with all your being, because it is truly so good. And I think the only way people are going to hear about that is if people like me share our experiences. You look at what happened in the stories of the Bible, there are very similar things happened. People were coming back from the dead. People were telling stories of the miracles that happened to them, the amazing things that happened to them. And that, I think, is how the positive light side of the universe really, really comes in and demolishes the darkness. And that's what I want to see happen. I want to see the kingdom of light get as much publicity as it possibly can, so that people can be set free and filled with joy.
Absolutely. And I think it's brilliant that, it's becoming a bit more mainstream now to share these experiences. And I know one of my first guests had his experience, I think in the 70s or so, and he was taken to jail actually because what he was saying that happened just did not add up with people's reality at the time. So I think it's really important for those of us who haven't had an NDE to understand what happens when you do. And there's so many lessons that we can take from it, as well as for other people who have had similar experiences to understand that they're not alone. And it helps them process and integrate the experience as well.
Absolutely true. And look, I'm not alone here. There are so many people who've had near-death experiences and encountered God and come back with stories to tell about how God's changed their life as a result. So it's worth, for those of you who are interested, there's one particular author I highly recommend, a man called John Burke. He's written two amazing books. One's called Imagine Heaven, and the more recent one is called Imagine the God of Heaven. And they are all about near-death experiences and many near-death experiences that he's collected and got the stories together and put them into a big book. So if you're interested in this, that's one great way to find out more. And if you're interested in my book, it's called Dying to Be Alive by C. Thomas Perry, and that's available Amazon and good bookstores. You can order that in or order it online, not a problem. It's freely available. But if this interests you, I would really encourage you to follow up on it. I find the more reading I do on this subject, the more my life is lifted up, the better I feel, the happier I am as a human being, because it just keeps me in that perspective that life is good, life is eternal, life is wonderful. And that's the way everybody should live.
Colin, how can people find you?
Well, there is the Thomas Perry YouTube channel that has a lot of my interviews and podcasts and things up there. There's also a Facebook page where they can find me there. Always happy to chat with people if you put in comments or contact me that way. No problem. And I have an email address, which is thomasperryauthor, all one word, @gmail.com. And if people want to email me, ask me questions, that's fine. It may take me a little while to respond, but yeah, I'm quite happy to be in touch with people and talk further about this. But I highly recommend, I'm not saying this to sell books, because there is only so much you can say in a 1 hour interview. But in the book, there's a lot more detail. It follows on a lot more into possibilities afterwards, where you can go with this when you start to actually practice it in your life. Things like some visions that I've been given as a result of this, all sorts of different things in there that I think you might find very helpful and very interesting to read about. So I do encourage you to read my book and read books by other authors on this subject, because I think it will help your life enormously.